Hey guys, welcome back to Release the Craftin. Priscilla here with another episode of Storycraft. And this is actually take two because I messed it up the first time I was telling you guys. So we're going to see how much more unhinged it gets in round two. But here we go. Storycraft is a thing where I tell you guys a story while I do a craft. And right now I'm working on some requests. How do you get a request in, you might wonder? If there's a story you want me to tell, well, you would just go to the comments below and you would leave a request for a story you'd like to hear. And if you would like a priority request, you could consider joining my Patreon because they get first dibs on requests, and that's what we're doing today is another Patreon request because I'm doing those first. Like I said, that's a benefit of being a patron on my Patreon. So yeah, that's a thing that you could do, and I'm going to tell you guys a story today. The story that was requested is Bluebeard, and you guys, this is a good story. But I also have, like, issues with it, which I'll bring up at the end. I have lots of thoughts and feelings about this story, but I do really like this story for a number of reasons. Those of you who know me or have been paying attention will probably figure out why about midway through. But I'm excited to tell you the story, even though I'm telling it to you for the second time. But it's okay. I'm not bitter about it at all. We're professionals here. We continue to move forward and strive for excellence. So here we go. The story of Bluebeard takes place in the way long ago in France. Where in France? I don't know. Somewhere in France. I don't actually know cities in France. So, yeah. We're in France. And, it stars a man who goes by the name Bluebeard. And you might be like, why do they call him Bluebeard? Why is his name Bluebeard? What an interesting name. Is that a family name? No. It's not a family name. It's a bully name. Do you know why it's a bully name? Because he literally has a blue beard. A beard so blue, so vibrant, that everyone thinks it's heinous. So they think he's ugly. Everyone calls him ugly. Not to his face. No, not to his face, and I'll tell you why in a second. But everyone thinks this Bluebeard is disgusting. And, in return, they call him Bluebeard, and it just seems like he accepted that as a moniker. So he's probably had a Bluebeard for a very long time. I don't know why he doesn't shave it. He shouldn't have to shave it to fit in with society's standards, because I don't think a Bluebeard is the most preposterous thing a person could have. More on that later. But also, like, his name is Bluebeard. He has a Bluebeard. And for some reason, everyone thinks he's ugly for it. But nobody says it to him, and I told you I'd tell you why. I'm going to tell you why right now. It's because he's filthy, stinking rich. He is filthy, filthy, stinking rich. This man is literally the 1% in old-timey France. Because that's how rich he is. He's, like, stupid rich. So everyone's like, oh my god, that beard is so freaking gross. Oh no, here he comes. Shut up, shh. And then as soon as he walks away, they're like, oh my god, did you see that beard? It was hideous. But they don't want to say it to his face because they don't want to piss him off. He's a man of means, okay? So Bluebeard, absolutely wealthy guy. Also, in the town, people talk about him, right? Not just his hideous blue beard, but there's a lot of stories circulating and nobody really knows the truth of it. But what they do know is that in addition to having an ugly, stinky blue beard, Bluebeard has had like 6 other wives. And they're all sort of leaning into thinking that maybe they just left because they couldn't stand the sight of his hideous beard. But nobody really knows for sure. It's sort of a question mark. They also don't know how he got the wives in the first place because his beard is so freaking gross, right? So that's where everybody stands. That's where Bluebeard is at. And it's on a fine sunny day when Bluebeard goes down to the village and he's like, hey, random widow lady who's kind of my neighbor if you consider that her house is the closest to my house, but my house is a palatial mansion on the outskirts of town, and her house is this little tiny house that's like the first one you see when you come in. He's like, hey, you're my neighbor, and I happen to notice that your 2 sons are away being soldiers, and your 2 daughters are just sitting here doing nothing. Wouldn't it be great if maybe you let me marry one? You can pick which one. I'm not picky. I'm not fussy at all. Like, anyone you would like me to marry, I will marry. And the widow's like, oh, your beard's so gross. But she doesn't say that to his face. That's an inside thought. And she's like, okay, well, let me think about it because I don't have a lot of prospects, but I don't really want to marry my daughters to somebody with a blue beard. So let me just think about it. And Bluebeard's like, hey, I'm not going to pressure you or anything. I'm saying, like, you have to decide right now. Why don't you, your family, your closest friends and family, come to my, like, woodland cottage for a week of you know, fun at my expense. I'll pay for it. All expenses included. It'll just be like a fun romp in the woods for a little bit. And she's like, oh, I would love to go to your murder cabin in the woods. But it turns out his murder cabin isn't actually a murder cabin. It's more like a murder chalet in the woods. And it's only a murder thing because it's in the woods, and the woods are creepy. But otherwise, it's a very fine, very fine mansion. Because he's super freaking rich, you guys. I can't state how rich this man is. This is just one of his many homes. It's this random chalet in the woods, and he's like, would you like to come with me? And she's like, well, I can't say no to a free vacation. I am a single mother of many children, and I would love to get my grown-ass children out of the house and myself for a week on somebody else's dime. So she takes him up on the offer. She invites her neighbors, she invites her friends, she invites her family. They all go join Bluebeard in his woodland mansion, and they have a wonderful week of parties and hunting parties and balls, which are just fancier parties, and there's like tea parties. They partied the entire time. It was a riotous occasion. Everybody had a blast. Bluebeard paid for everything. No expenses were like spared, and this like is something that stands out to the youngest daughter, who is not named in the story, and that really irritates me. I'm gonna call her Tina. So Tina notices that Bluebeard, during this week of non-stop partying, there's probably a key party or two, like, let's be real, guys. During this week of nonstop partying, she's like, this man is so generous with his wealth. He's really nice. He treats my family very kindly. He's really nice to my mother. The only, like, negative thing I can say about him is that awful blue beard. And maybe it's not so bad after all. I mean, the sky is blue, and we're not mad at that. So, like, maybe we don't have to judge him so harshly because of his beard. So she tells him, you know what, I'll marry you. Like, I know my mother was trying to decide, but I'll take the initiative, and I will marry you. Because I don't think you're all that bad. And Bluebeard's like, fantastic. So when the week wraps up, they get home and they are immediately married. Like, no circumstance. They're not even going to wait for her brothers to get back in town from, like, the soldier things that they're doing. They're immediately married, and she's like, wow, okay. And he's like, all right, so let's move into my actual house. It's that big-ass house up the hill that, like, nobody wants to go to because I'm really scary with my blue beard, but it's really nice. And she's like, it does look really nice from down here, so let's go. So they go up to this house. They stay at his house for a couple of weeks. Everything is grand. Everything is wonderful. In fact, it's so wonderful that Tina writes a letter to her brothers, who, like I said, are soldiers, and they're away right now. And she's like, hey, why don't you come visit me on this day and come see my new house and meet my husband and all that stuff. So she sends that letter away, and she continues to have a merry old time living the life of luxury in Bluebeard's fantastic mansion. And then Bluebeard comes to her one day, and he's like, darling, I love you so much. I've had a wonderful time. I know that we're still in the middle of our honeymoon period, but unfortunately, I have a bit of business that I have to take care of, so I'm going to be gone. And she's like, oh no, that's unfortunate. I'll look after the house while you're away. And he's like, fantastic. I'm going to be gone for 6 weeks. And she's like, wow, 6 weeks. 6 weeks? That was business that you have to take care of all of a sudden right now, and you didn't know about before or mentioned before until now? And he's like, no, I didn't mention it at all, but now I have to take care of it. So she's like, all right. And he's like, before I go, I want to show you all the keys so that you know what's up here so that you can take care of the house. And she's like, all right. So he pulls out a big old key ring with a bunch of keys of all different sizes on it, and he's like, guess what, these first 6 keys all go to closets and wardrobes. And she's like, that's weird. And he's like, but inside those closets and wardrobes are the finest gowns, the finest suits, the finest clothes that you can get anywhere in the country, let alone the continent. Nobody has clothes this fine. They're in those closets and wardrobes. And she's like, 6 of them. Okay, all right. I'm making a mental note. And he's like, this one goes to my treasure room. Guess what's in it? And she's like, I don't know, honey. Your jokes are so funny, though. I can tell I'm going to be super surprised. And he's like, it's full of treasure. And she's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Amazing. A room full of treasure, and it's called the treasure room? I never would have guessed. So he's like, yes, it's absolutely wall-to-wall treasure. It's where I keep the majority of my riches, but it's not the only place I keep my riches, because guess what? This key goes to my gold vault. All my gold is in there. And she's like, wow, you just put all your stuff in one place and it's all in this house? Interesting investment choices. And he's like, and then this key, guess what this goes to? And she's like, I bet it's more expensive shit. And he's like, it's not, but it is, because this goes to my jewel room. It's just a room full of jewels. Super rare, super expensive jewels as far as the eye can see in this room. And she's like, that's amazing. That's incredible. That's a lot of wealth. And he's like, yeah, I know. I'm rich. And she's like, God, yeah, I know. I thought maybe when we got married, you know, you wouldn't have to tell me you were rich, but you're just going to keep telling me. Okay, cool. So, he goes through this entire list of keys, and all of them seem to lead to more and more lavish things. And at the very end of the key ring is a little tiny key, a little teeny tiny key. And it's a little rusty, dingy looking key. It doesn't match any of the other keys. The other keys are nice. The other keys are solid. This one, rusty, pockmarked, not cute at all. And he's like, this key, this is the last key I have to tell you about. And it's really important. I need you to listen to me, Tina. And she's like, oh my God, I'm dialed in. Like, what is it? Why are you so serious all of a sudden? And he's like, you can go into any of these rooms I've talked about. You can use any of these keys. You can use my wealth however you feel you need to while I am gone. For my money is your money, and I want nothing but your happiness. And she's like, oh, that's actually kind of sweet, BB. Like, wow. And he's like, yeah, yeah, I'm rich, but I'm also a nice guy. And she's like, again, I know that you're rich. And I know that you're nice. And he's like, all these rooms, yours to use. And in fact, I'm going to do you one better. While I'm away, I don't want you to be lonely. So invite your friends, your family, whoever you want to come over. And they can also use my wealth however they choose. You can spend your money on whatever. Have parties, banquets, feasts galore. Take them shopping. I don't care. Do what you would like with all these other keys. The power is yours. And I need you to understand that. And she's like, okay, I get it. Well, what's to do with that little key, though? And he's like, let me tell you. This little key is the key to the basement. And it is the only key that you cannot use. If you go into the basement, you will face my wrath, and it'll be a wrath like no other. And she's like, whoa, okay. That's your special man cave. I get it. And he's like, no, I don't think you understand. My wrath will be uncomparable. You will never have seen anything like it, and you will never see anything like it again. Do you understand? You cannot go in that room. And Tina's like, whoa, okay, BB, I will not go in that room. I mean, Bluebeard, I will definitely not go in that room. And he's like, fantastic. I knew I could count on you, Tina. You're such a good wife. And she's like, wow, okay. You got really intense there. It was a little scary for a second. But all right, thanks. So he gives her the keys, and Bluebeard takes off on his horse or his carriage, whatever rich people were using to get around at that time. And he goes on his really important business trip he couldn't tell her about beforehand. It just suddenly came up right now. So, Tina does exactly what Bluebeard told her she could do. She invites her family up. She invites some friends from the village to come up, and, you know, she's ready to host, like, you know, a nice little get-together while they enjoy it. And in the time that she's, like, preparing the house, getting ready for these visitors, she's thinking about that key, that little key to the basement, where she's like, what a weird thing. If he didn't want me to go in there, why did he even put it on the key ring? That's so strange. What a weird choice he made. And she can't stop thinking about it. So even when her friends and family show up and they're having this party, she's still thinking about this little key. And she's like, I got a weird feeling about this little key. And I feel like maybe I should pursue it. I don't know. Dang. And when, you know, her friends and family have all dined and they have heard that Bluebeard has gone, and he's going to be gone for quite a while, they do exactly what I would do if you left me alone in a stupid rich person's house. They immediately start looking around his house. They start digging through all the stuff, checking all the rooms, pulling open drawers, cabinets, closets, anything they can get their little noses into, they're in there. Because my fellow nosies, that's where we would be. I absolutely want to know what's in people's closets. It's a weird thing. I want to know. And they also wanted to know. So, while her friends and family are running around the house, or the mansion, I shouldn't, like, undersell it, while they're running around, they're looking in all these places, and she's sitting there with her key ring, just staring at this little key, you know, and she gives them the other key so that they can see all the other rooms, so they can go see if the jewel room really has jewels as far as the eye can see. And she's holding on to the little tiny key, and she's like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go look. It's stupid to, like, seal off the room. How's he gonna know? How's he gonna know if I go to the room? How's he gonna know? So, she goes down to the basement. She opens the door with a little tiny key. And when she opens the door, do you know what's inside, you guys? It's not golden jewels. In fact, the first thing she notices is that the floor is covered in blood. And not fresh blood. Gross, like, clotted, nasty blood all over the floor. And when she looks up, hanging from the rafters are the 6 wives that had gone missing under mysterious circumstances that people really didn't think too hard about before in the past. So what she sees are the mutilated bodies of 6 women. Their blood is all over the room. It's a bloody room. It's disgusting. And she is so horrified by what she sees that she drops the little tiny key for a second, and it lands in the blood. And panicked, she picks up the key, she runs out of the room, she locks the door, and she runs back upstairs because she just realized that she's married to a murderer. Married to a murderer. So she's like, okay, so maybe Bluebeard isn't ugly because of the color of his beard, but the color of his soul. So, after that fright, she goes, back upstairs, like I said, and she sees that there is blood stained on the key, because that's where she dropped it, right? So she goes to wash the key off, and no matter how hard she tries, the blood won't come off. So she scrubs and scrubs and scrubs. She goes and she gets, like, the scrapey stones that they used back then. I don't know how they used to wash dishes, but she gets every tool in her arsenal to get the blood off this, and it doesn't happen. And when she thinks that she maybe is getting the blood off it, she turns it over, it's on the other side. It just never ends. The key, you see, is enchanted. So it's just saving this blood memory on it, and she can't, like, get it off there. So she panics, and she manages to get all the keys back from all of her friends and family, and she probably didn't look at their pockets too closely, because Bluebeard said they could have whatever they wanted, so they stuffed their pockets. But then she does not return the little key to the key ring. She leaves it in another room while she thinks about what to do and how she can get herself out of this situation, because she doesn't have a plan. And wouldn't you guys know it, but who showed up? Bluebeard. Bluebeard showed up. He came back. He came back immediately. He's gone like less than 12 hours. The man was back. And he tells her, oh, wouldn't you know it? While I was on the road, I got a letter that told me all my business had been taken care of, and I didn't actually need to make the journey after all. How fortunate was that? And she's like, wow, so fortunate. How convenient. You got a letter while you were on the road? That's how the mail works now? How interesting. I'm so happy to see you. And he's like, fantastic. I'm so happy to be home too. And we can celebrate as soon as you give me back my keys. And she's like, oh, your keys. Your keys on the key ring. And he's like, yep, those keys. And she's like, the keys on the key ring that are yours, your key ring. And he's like, yes, my key ring, give it to me. And she's like, oh, yeah, it's right here. I have it right here. Here you go. Here's your key ring. And she is sweating bullets, you guys. Tina is not happy. And she's trying to think of a way out of this. Bluebeard takes his keys, and he doesn't even look. He doesn't even look at the key ring, you guys. He just puts it in his pocket and goes, where's the basement key? It doesn't seem to be on here. And she's like, the basement key? The basement key? It's not on there. Are you sure? It doesn't really look like you looked. And he goes, I already know it's not on there. I can tell. And she's like, oh, okay, maybe I misplaced it. It must have fallen off the ring. And he's like, well, go freaking find it then. And, at this change of tone, Tina's like, oh, crap, okay. Can't keep stalling this guy because he's not going to let me get away with it. So she goes to the other room. She picks up the key. She brings it back to him very sheepishly. And she's like, here's the key that's missing. I need to look at it super close. And Bluebeard's like, yeah, it's covered in blood, though. And she's like, oh yeah, it's the craziest thing. I must have cut my finger. And he's like, yeah, except that you're a damn liar. I know that you went into the basement, Tina. So Tina, rightly so, panics, throws herself at his feet, and she's like, please have mercy. I didn't mean to look. I just couldn't help myself. It was unfortunate. I won't tell anybody about what's in there. I didn't even see what was in there. Honestly, I was barely in there, just long enough to drop the key and all the blood and then leave. And I don't even know what blood that was from. It could have been anything. Like, please don't kill me. And he's like, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I told you that my wrath would be incomparable. And she's like, yeah, I remember your speech. It was terrifying then. It's terrifying now. You don't have to do it. I promise I'll be a good wife. And he's like, yeah, I'm absolutely gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you right now. Let me get my sword. And she's like, wait, before you kill me though, if I have to die, can I at least say my prayers first so I can be absolved before I go? And he's like, well, okay, because it's gonna take me like a second to get my sword. So you have a quarter of an hour. to do your prayers. And then you die. And she's like, okay, cool. 15 minutes, I got it. I can do it. I'm just going to do it upstairs, okay? And he's like, yeah, you can go anywhere you want. You're not getting away from me. You're going to join my other wives in that room. Because like them, you're a nosy bitch. And she's like, oh shit, that hurt a little bit, because it's true. But also, maybe not the stance you should take when people violate your personal space. You could just have a conversation about it. And he's like, get upstairs and say your prayers. So she's like, okay. So Tina runs upstairs to go say her prayers, but she's not really going to say her prayers. What she does is she leans out the window because her sister, Anne, is still there. Anne is still in the house. So she yells out the window and she's like, oh my God, Anne, please tell me, if you're looking over the hill, do you see our brothers coming? And Anne leans out the window and she's like, what? Our brothers? Let me look. So she looks out at the hill, out in the distance, to see if her brothers are on the way. And Anne's like, I don't see anything. And this is going to be a direct quote, you guys. I see nothing but the sun that makes the dust and the grass which is green. Like, thank you, Anne, for taking the time to wax poetic in this dire situation. So Tina's like, could you check again? Because our brothers are supposed to be here today, and it's really important that they show up right now. So Anne looks again, and she's like, okay, let me check. I don't see anything but the sun that makes the dust and the grass that's green. And Tina's like, I don't need the description. I just need you to look and tell me if they're coming. They should be here, like, soon. They should be coming over the hill. Can you look again? And Anne looks, and she's like, oh, I do see some dust over in the distance. And then Tina gets really excited, and she's like, is it our brothers? And Anne goes, no, it's just some sheep. At which point, during all this back and forth, you might be like, where's Bluebeard? What's going on with Bluebeard? Well, he's down the stairs, screaming up the stairway to Tina to come down so that she can die, which surprisingly shakes the whole castle. He's so loud. But Anne doesn't seem to notice or have any urgency or concern, so she continues to wax poetic in this exchange while they go back and forth trying to see if their brothers are coming over the hill. And the whole time that Bluebeard is screaming up the stairs for Tina to come down, she's like, 1 minute more, please. 1 minute more, husband. And he's like, okay, a minute. Then he waits a minute and then just starts screaming again. And then again, they have to do the whole thing over. So it's just like a non-stop revolving door of, do you see your brothers? No, but I see dust and sun and grass and sheep and all the things that you're not asking me about. And I'm ignoring the sound of this man just roaring up at you about how he's going to murder you when you come downstairs. So I can tell you all the fun things I'm saying. Oh, look, a bird. And then, Tina's like, oh my God, could you please just tell me if our brothers are coming, please? Also, could you wait a minute, please, darling, please, honey? Those prayers are really important. So they're doing all of this all together. And finally, Bluebeard is like, if you don't come down, I will come up and drag you down, all the way down to that basement. And she's like, oh God, okay, I'm coming. And she goes, Anne, do you see our brothers, yes or no? And it's like, oh, let me check again. And so she looks out at the hill and she's like, I see 2 clouds of dust that look like men on horseback, so they very well could be our brothers. And Tina's like, it took you so long to say that. So long to say that. Could you signal them to hurry up? Because I'm going to die. My husband is going to kill me if you don't get them to hurry up. And Anne's like, oh, well, why didn't you say it was an emergency in the first place? I'll totally get them to hurry up. So Anne proceeds to signal the riders to hurry up. And Tina goes downstairs to face her fate because she doesn't want Bluebeard to drag her down to the basement and get stuck in the bloody room. So, once Tina gets down to the bottom of the stairs, she throws herself at Bluebeard's feet again, and she's like, Bibi, please have mercy on me. You don't have to kill me. Like, I don't mind that your beard is blue. It's okay. I won't tell anybody. You're crazy. And he's like, nope, you have to die. So he raises his saber up in the air to chop her head off. Just then, her brothers burst in the door. They fire their pistols. They shoot at Bluebeard, and he dies. Which is the perfect timing, the most perfectest of perfect timing in the universe, because fortunately for Tina, she remembered that she asked her brothers to show up on that very specific day, and they did. So it saved her life. So, after Bluebeard is killed, her brothers are like, great, we're so happy we can show up here. And then she shows them the murder basement. And, you know, they clean everything out. They get it all wrapped up. Turns out that since Bluebeard has no children and she's his legal wife, Tina gets to inherit the entirety of his fortune. So, you know, once they do some deep cleaning of the basement, she's like, great, I'm going to move in here. This is going to be my permanent home. I'm going to set up my sister Anne with a good, smart husband who knows urgency when he hears it. And I'm also going to get some commendations from my brother so that they can get promoted in the army. I'm going to pay for those because I used to have to pay for that. And then, you know, she probably puts her mom up in a really nice house, and eventually Tina gets remarried to a really great guy who's like not a douchebag, blood room like having person whatsoever, and he's super chill, and they live happily ever after. And that's the end. That's the end of Bluebeard. So, yeah, that was my story. It is an interesting story. I had a lot of thoughts about it. I just want to say a couple of facts or things that happened into my mind. The first fact is that this was originally written by Charles Perrault, but there's some inconsistencies in his story that sort of indicate that this was passed to him orally. So this story might be even older than Charles Perrault, who was alive a long time ago, but not that long ago. I should have looked that up before I started talking about it, but I didn't, so here we are. So yeah, this is a really old story that seems to have taken a different life and has been retold so much that it is full of a bunch of strange anachronisms now. The thing that is like the takeaway for this story, the moral of this story, why they tell this story, is basically to tell women to mind their business and be good wives and that kind of stuff, which is not my takeaway when I read this. When I heard this story, I've heard this story a lot. I've known about Bluebeard for quite a while, so I was really excited to tell this story because I did not have to do that much research for it. But my takeaway for this story has never been be like quiet and obedient and listen to your husband and not be nosy. Never, ever, ever has that been my takeaway. My takeaway has been maybe don't bully somebody so much in childhood that they become like a serial killer when they're older, but also maybe vet the guy you're going to marry a little bit more. Just do a little bit of vetting. Find out your quirks. Get to know him a little bit. Those are things. Don't trust that guy with the blue beard. Those are things that I took away from this story. The story also calls to mind Pandora's box. It has the same elements, you know. Don't open this jar, don't go into this room, all this nosy woman ruined everything, and either literally or metaphorically, like, unleash the horror by being curious. So I do like that, like, it's like a callback, and it also seems like a long derivative version of Pandora's box, you know, after like the centuries of passing down the tale of Pandora's box, it eventually became this sort of story a la Pandora's box. So like that was just a really interesting little tidbit that I thought about while doing this. And then I could not help but imagine, and this is for people who have read Game of Thrones, not people who have seen it, because it's going to be different if you've seen it. But if you've read Game of Thrones, the Bluebeard part won't throw you off so much as it did these people, because it's actually really customary for the Tyroshi people to have like dyed hair in fantastic colors, including blue. And this is so common that the lover that Daenerys takes, Daario Naharis, has a blue beard in the story, which, like, when I first read that in the book, I was like, I can't imagine how this man would be attractive. And then HBO was like, we can't either, so we made him actually attractive. We made him Ed Screen, and I was like, oh, well, I see it now. But in the book, it's supposed to be that he's like really handsome despite having a blue beard. And nobody thinks it's weird. They just think it's, like, customary for Tyroshi people. So I thought about that while I was, like, rereading this and refreshing my memory so that I could tell you guys this story, and just how funny that, like, little picture was. But then it also made me start wondering, and this is just sidetrack Game of Thrones talk now, like, is that, like, an indication? Was, like, George R.R. Martin inspired by Bluebeard, and that's why he gave Daario Bluebeard? And should it be like a hint that Daario shouldn't be trusted because Bluebeard had a blood room? I don't know. Theories abound, but that's where I ended up when I started reading this. And then also, this story is really similar to the tale of the robber bridegroom, which I also did in Storycraft. And Sort of had a similar theme, but not quite, because that guy was like, obviously don't trust this guy from the beginning, but it still has a lot of the same elements. But if you're looking for something in that same vein as this story, and you haven't heard The Robber Bridegroom yet, I would suggest checking it out. It's going to be linked in the playlist below. But, yeah, those are my thoughts and feelings on Bluebeard. I'm not really a fan of stories that tell women to mind their business. That should be apparent. Especially in this case, because minding her business would have been just like staying in this castle with this guy who's going to murder her for one reason or another. It was eventually going to come around. So, like, you know, if you've seen true crime, you know this was going to end badly somehow. But that's everything I have to say about Bluebeard today, you guys. I hope that you enjoyed the story. If you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate your faces, and I will catch you guys all in the next one. Until then, happy crafting. Bye!